Now, here's another document that you want to be aware of that gives you some idea of what the Greeks fairly early thought the polis was for and about, and what the relationship between individual and polis was. In this case, I'm talking about Herodotus, who very early in his history speaks about, tells the story, really, of his visit to Lydia, to the land of the great tyrant Croesus, who is also the richest man in the world. It's not clear that this event ever really took place, but it's really not very important, because what Herodotus is doing is telling how he, I think, and how the Greeks in general viewed the questions at issue. Solon goes to visit Croesus. Croesus asks Solon to tell him who is the happiest, the most fortunate, both of those things contained in the words he uses, that he had ever seen. Solon was now a man of full years. He was a man of greatly respected. He turns out to be one of the 7 sages that the ancient Greeks selected for the wisest men who ever were. So, it would be interesting to know what he thought about that. Of course, Croesus had shown his great wealth already to Solon, and in my view, he put the question this way. Solon, as he looked around at his fabulous wealth and great good fortune, he said, who do you think is the happiest, most fortunate man you ever knew? And you know what the answer was that he expected. Solon answered, Tellus of Athens. I bet you never heard of Tellus of Athens. Neither had Croesus. Neither had anybody else outside of Athens. Croesus was astonished, and he asked Solon, why did he select Tellus? And here's what Herodotus says. First, because his city was flourishing, that is, his polis, that's the word in Greek, was flourishing in his time. And he himself had sons, both beautiful and good. The words in Greek are kalos kagathos for the singular, kaloi kagathoi, and it's a kind of a formula. It means a gentleman. It means the best kind of person. If a person is kalos kagathos, it means he is good to look at and his soul is excellent, all that you could expect of a person. So he had he had sons, beautiful and good, and he lived to see children born to each of them. And these children all grew up. And further, because after a life spent in what our people look upon as comfort, his end was surpassingly glorious. In a battle between the Athenians and their neighbors near Eleusis, he came to the assistance of his countrymen, routed the foe, and died upon the field most gallantly. The Athenians gave him a public funeral on the spot where he fell and paid him the highest honors. So to summarize, the happiest, the most fortunate man that Solon ever knew was a dead Athenian that nobody ever heard of. Why? What does this say? Right? We see in this passage something that reveals so much about what the Greek values were, and you'll see how closely they were tied up with the polis and the primacy of the polis in their lives. Well, why are things good? Well, his city, his polis was doing well. A man who is living in a polis not doing well, how can he be happy? There's just no way. Secondly, sons. Now, this has to do with the Greek idea about immortality and mortality. Since the Greeks really didn't believe in personal immortality, how do you find what everybody wants? Immortality. One way is through your family, and it's sons who carry forward the family name, so to speak. So if you have sons and they are healthy and they do well and they have children, that means your name will be carried into the future, your memory will persist, and that is one form of immortality. And then, of course, the greatest form of immortality, and think of it when you compare it with what was the form of immortality available to Achilles and his fellow heroes. You fought for your polis. And when you died fighting nobly for your polis, you will be, and were then, you were honored extraordinarily by that polis. And what everybody knew then was that your memory would last thereafter, so long as your polis lasted. And the proof of it is that Herodotus knows that story and is telling it, as will other storytellers. And in fact, it worked. Here we are, talking about Tellus, all these many years later, thanks to Herodotus. But the point is that this form of immortality is available to Tellus because of his place in the polis, because of the deeds he does for the polis. And that is the greatest possible payoff. And there you see something that is, I've been making the case that a polis is a different thing from any other city-state. I'm not aware that any other culture that had city-states had ideas of this kind that helped explain why one was associated with it and cared about it.